And just like that, we are back. Welcome to Chronicles of Power, a podcast dedicated to the world of power, where I review and break down the latest episode in the Powerverse. We are brought to you by Private Listed, your source for all things music, sports, culture, and entertainment. I am your host, Keemie, and today I have a very special guest in the building with me today. First time guest, not a repeat guest. So this is Jay from Elite TV, if you don't know. So Elite TV does breakdowns of all shows, so not just Power. He talks about everything. He does have a very big power niche there, but he talks about other things, and I think that he has really great content, and he also has really great insight. So welcome to the show, Jay.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
You're welcome. So first things first, I do want to get into some news that we've had over the week since the finale of Power Book 4 Force has aired. We did get some behind the scenes footage of filming for Power Origins. Were you able to see some of that footage?
The footage, was it, I saw the footage of Ghost and Cannon, I believe. Was there more recent footage since then?
Yeah, there was. So this week on Chronicles of Power on the page that you can follow us at Chronicles of Power on Instagram, we posted some behind the scenes footage of them filming Power Origins. And it looks to be like a car chase, and hopefully we can add the clip in while I'm talking about it so you guys can see it just in case you didn't see it. And there was a car chase between, it looks like cops, and it wasn't Kanan, it wasn't Ghost, and it wasn't Tommy. So we'll see who exactly they were chasing. Also, we got some new casting news for Origins. Did you see that one?
Yeah, that's those I did see, yes.
Okay, so tell me, what's your thoughts about the casting for Origins so far?
The one that I found most interesting because in the original Power, we didn't really hear much about Ghost's extended family, but we did just hear that they cast his grandmother, and I believe her
Mhm.
name was, let me see, that is Tanya Pinkins playing Grandma Charlene, yes.
Yes, I'm excited for her to be on any cast. She's a world-class actress. I love this woman since I was a little girl, right? So I'm glad that she's there. I'm curious what Ghost's grandmother is going to bring to the essence of Power, and giving us more backstory on Ghost's life, because we don't know anything about him. The most we know
Exactly.
was that his dad was a drunk, and that's coming from Tommy's mouth, right? That's that's what we learned from him. But some of the other good castings, like we have Hill Harper joining
Yeah,
the crew.
that one I was definitely excited about because, great actor, feel me? So I know, yeah, he's playing a cop. Yeah, yeah. So I'm like, I know whatever
Perfect
role
role
he
for him.
plays, exactly, he's gonna kill it. I know he's gonna do great. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I am definitely excited. I cannot wait for this show to start. The only thing that I haven't talked about on camera, and I know that I've talked about it behind the scenes with other people and other creators, how do you feel about them getting 18 episodes for Power Origins?
To me, that's a big, 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 big win because like I've always felt like, Power kind of needs more time to tell the stories that they're telling.
Mm.
And 10 episodes isn't always enough, to just fit everything in there and develop the characters in a proper way and stuff like that. So 18 episodes in one season, I can just tell that Stars believes in the vision that Sasha Penn is telling.
I wouldn't have asked them to believe in anyone else.
All right, exactly, exactly.
But the only concern that I have, or I think the thing that kind of scares me, is that it scares me because this is something that I love, but I've seen that other people may get a little bit annoyed by. Like, Sasha Penn is going to tell you a story. He is going to build a house. There's going to be the foundation. There's going to be the painting, the bricks, the materials, the finishes that he is going to build out, and build out a whole story for you. And sometimes I feel like some people who watch Power, they are too concerned with shoot 'em up, bang bang, and the action that's going to come along with it, where they want these big reveals and these big kills all of the time. And 18 episodes tells me that there's a story, right? Because if he did that
Mhm.
within 10 episodes for each season, and he's building and building and building, I can only imagine what's going to happen within the 18 episodes. Now, I like it, right? Like, I want you to build out a whole world for me. I like Lord of the Rings. I like I like the Two Towers. I like that there is a journey that we have
Mhm.
to go on. And I'm not so much into the fast fashion of storytelling, or just getting in and get out and that's it. Considering how stories are told now on television, excuse me. I didn't want to say network television. So one of the things that someone brought up was that the 18 episodes, do you think that they're going to air straight through, or do you think that they're going to break it up?
I do think, because what would Power be without, the mid-season break, stuff like that. I do think there will be some breaks, but no, I think fans are blowing out of proportion when they say, "Oh, we'll get 6 episodes here, and then it'll be a part 2 and a part 3 and a part." No, I genuinely don't think so. I could be wrong. I just don't see them doing that. I just think that they got an 18 episode first season for purely, storytelling purposes. Because as you said, Sasha Penn, when he does, his storytelling, he does it the right way. He builds the foundation, he builds the story up gradually. So by the time, the story climaxes, the fans are reeled in, they're hooked, it's set properly. So I don't think, they're doing it more so like, give us a ton of breaks. I think, Sasha Penn just realized that he needed more time to tell the story. Cause, a lot of shows nowadays, the norm is like 6 episodes, 10 episodes. We're not getting these 18, 19, 20 episode counts in a single season anymore. So the fact that they're doing that for Origins, it just speaks volumes, Sasha Penn's ability as a showrunner. I just think,
Mhm.
Stars is fully on board with his vision for what Origins is gonna be.
Yeah, I agree. So, thank you for pointing out those points, and I that's something that I do want to agree with. I've heard Sasha say that like Stars, they believe in his vision. He believes that Stars is going to give him what he needs in order to tell his story. As a matter of fact, he said that in one of his last interviews with me. So that's why I'm happy, and we get to see something really come to fruition and see how he spreads his wings with given the within the allotted time that he has now. Back to Force, right? Now, full transparency, Jay and I actually recorded another show back when this first aired. But I do want to be transparent and tell you guys that when I recorded, I had only watched the episode one time and I was not happy with the episode, right? And it's not that I wasn't happy, it's just that my critique came off a bit harsh and I've had more time to think about some of the storylines, the plots, and where the story is supposed to end. But one thing that I did say last week that I still stand firm on is that I understand what episode 10 had to be. Episode 10 had to do two things, maybe even three. One of those things was we had to wrap up a couple storylines. And in addition to wrapping them up, they couldn't be wrapped so tight that there wasn't any room to expound, which brings me to point number two. Episode 10 was also supposed to give us a segue into possibly a spinoff of a spinoff. So we were able to meet and see, not meet, but see Tariq in Chicago, out of his element in New York, whereas he comes in and he saves Uncle Tommy. We'll talk about that more further once we go through wrapping up the storylines and wrapping up Tommy's time in Chicago. The third thing that episode 10 had to do was they had to close out Chicago. And I think I understand that now. After first watching it, I was a little annoyed because I couldn't, like, I just, maybe I was expecting something else. And maybe I didn't, my expectations for the ending of the show, considering all of the 9 episodes prior to that 10th episode, were pretty stellar, right? And one of the things that I saw within the last episodes was there was the killing of Diamond. So Diamond was mistakenly murdered by Tommy. And I thought that we were going to have a big fan reaction to that, but it was kind of lukewarm. So I wonder, do you think that Diamond's death fell flat this season?
I think part of the reason why, well, first off, I definitely do think, there was a lack of like fan reaction to that. Honestly, I felt like felt more of a fan reaction when JP died as opposed to Diamond, even though Diamond was, arguably a bigger character.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, like in my opinion, part of that reason is just because at the end of the day, Tommy didn't really mean to kill Diamond. It was like, Diamond died taking a bullet for Jannard.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, even in the following episode, that wasn't really expanded upon because it picks up directly right after the previous episode. So we don't get, a funeral for Diamond. We got the little cardboard cutout, which, was nice, but we didn't get to see a funeral. We didn't get to see a lot of mourning, stuff like that. So, I think just they, like you said, the episode had a lot to do. So I'm not surprised that we didn't get to, dive deep into the mourning of Diamond and how that affected CBI and the whole crew and even Jannard to a deeper extent. But, you know,
No, you're right, because one of the things that I think took me by surprise was that we got the science fair cut out the 3D board
Yeah.
for
The
Diamond.
trifold, yep, yeah, yeah.
We got the trifold board for Diamond, and we had a production-wise, we had a funeral for JP. So that made me question, was I supposed to be sad by Diamond's death, or was I supposed to be more affected by JP's death? And in terms of storytelling, like, we had a whole big funeral
Mhm.
for JP, and I think that was supposed to give us some sort of inclination about what's happening within the story. Tommy is still on top, so he can afford to put together a funeral service for his brother. They have a matriarch, or they have a maternal figure within the story, which is Kate, and then Tommy is still building out his family, right? There is a better relationship with Miguel, and obviously he is expecting a baby with Maria. So, and also JP has a son. So they're showing the family dynamic there because there is a family. There's still a running business. There's still money coming in. And on the other hand, CBI is falling apart.
Yeah, in shambles.
They're in shambles. They're ripping at the seams. The head, or the proposed head of CBI is Diamond, and now he's passed away. All plans are now left to a quote unquote junkie, right? So, does he have the capacity to plan out a funeral for his brother? There's no mom, there's no dad, he has no children, not in a serious relationship. So, who exactly is there to mourn for him besides his brother, who not only is mourning, but also feels guilty about his death? So, maybe that was what they wanted to show us, that everything is in shambles and there is no time for organization or for planning when everything is falling apart. And that's why I said I needed some time away from
Okay,
watching the episode.
yeah, when you put it like that, okay, that actually does make a lot of sense. Because, like you said, I never really thought about it. Yeah, because Diamond's mother is gone, his father's gone. He really only had Jannard, and Jannard is not in any state of mind to be planning a funeral, anything like that. Like, so okay, I suppose that makes sense. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Look, I'm here to decipher all of the writing here because we haven't had any of the writers on this season, and that is completely I'll take full responsibility for that. I have reached out to writers, but just that timing didn't work this season. And maybe next season we'll be able to have on more writers when we start covering Raising Canaan. So another point that I wanted to go over, or a point of contention that I had last week that I may be feeling a little different about this week is Tariq. How did you feel about Tariq popping up in Chicago?
It's funny you say that because I feel like as though our positions have kind of flipped because last week I was more so feeling it, and I know you had your own thoughts on that, but after rewatching the episode, I think I'm a bit not. I liked him being in the episode. Do think it was very good for the show, but I felt as though that they could have gone about it in a better way. At least as far as his introduction scene, him
Mhm,
conveniently being there, just so when Tommy was about to get shot.
mhm,
I felt as though that was a bit too convenient even for Power. But,
mhm,
like I said, I do like the fact that he was in the show. He seemed more mature as opposed to his appearances in book 2, stuff like that. But, yeah, I just feel as though they could have gone about, him being introduced into Force in a better manner.
mm. Okay, so maybe we haven't flipped because I still contend that I understood why he had to be there. From like what I said at the beginning of the episode, I understood why because they have to segue into what's supposed to come next. However, that little wink into the camera, I was not a fan of, and the head nod, I was not a fan of that, and I understand why Tariq has to be there. I Because we are in power, sometimes some of the things I just roll with it and I'm like, "Hey, they told us that Uncle Tommy had to make a call. We are supposed to infer that he is calling Tariq. We have
Right.
talked about that all season. We knew that he was calling Tariq.
Mhm.
We saw the pictures from
Right.
2 years ago of him being in the basement talking to someone, right? So we knew that he was coming. So there was no surprise there for people who are entrenched in what is happening. Now, for people who are not following blogs and looking for pictures of filming, I love that they got that surprise.
Right.
And one of the things that made me kind of soften my view of how I felt about the last episode was looking at how excited people were to see that Tariq made it to Chicago and that he was helping his Uncle Tommy. I like that. But you know what else I did like? I may not have liked how the scene was executed, but I did like the scene that he had with D-Mac. And I think this is something that you and we didn't get to talk too much about. So let me ask you, when you saw Tariq sitting with D-Mac and he kind of like gave a little look when D-Mac was talking about Tommy and referring to him as Uncle Tommy, did you think that Tariq felt a little jealous of D-Mac's relationship with Tommy?
It's funny you say that because that was actually one of the things I was gonna point out because I know a lot of fans thought like, between the scene and the music that was playing and the way that, Tariq was looking at D-Mac, they thought like, oh, is Tariq planning something? Is he plotting? What is he going? What is he doing? I don't think he was more so like jealous per se. I think, well, maybe not. I think he might have been jealous of the fact that he had been out of Tommy's life for so long because at one point, that role that D-Mac had as, Tommy's nephew was Tariq's. Tommy
Mhm,
was the one that was looking out for Tariq a lot of the time. And, from what D-Mac was saying, he was like, oh, I got Uncle Tommy, even if I don't have anyone else. You can kind of tell that Tariq was like, like, I kind of miss having that. At least that's the way I interpreted it. And then once, D-Mac had revealed that, okay, Tommy has Maria, they're having a kid, stuff like that. I think the gears in Tariq's head was kind of like churning a bit. And he realized, okay, maybe I can use this to, convince Tommy to come back to New York, raise his child where he grew up, stuff like that.
mhm. So here's two things. I want to go back to one of the points because I forgot to mention something. So one of the reasons why I didn't like the scene, and I forgot to mention this before, was because I was like, who are these random people with Tariq? Right? It's like Tariq comes all the way to Chicago.
Right, right, right.
Where is Braden?
Yeah.
And you know what we didn't talk about was that after we recorded our episode, Gianni Paolo speaks out about why he was not in the episode. As a matter of fact, when Forrest posted the scene from the episode, I actually wrote, "Hey, where was Braden?" And once they didn't answer me, I knew I was like, "Oh, okay."
Ooh.
But Gianni Paolo actually answered, and I hope we can put that clip in the episode. But if we can't, here's what happened. He said that he was initially written into the episode. He was supposed to film it, and then the next day when the rewrite came out, he was taken out. Why was he taken out? He doesn't know. We don't know, but we can speculate. Why do you think Braden was taken out of the episode and he
From
wasn't
what
there to help Tariq?
Yeah. From what Gianni was saying, he said that, at least from what he could guess, that someone, involved in the show, they had saw the script that, Tariq and Braden were coming to Chicago. And then he said, alluded to some things that have happened. And he said when the rewrites came out, he wasn't in it. And he didn't name anyone specifically, but it seemed clear to me that it's at least someone involved in the show. And I know a lot of people were speculating like, oh, Gianni and Joseph Sikora, they were beefing, da da da. Nothing that I've seen from Joseph Sikora makes me think that, oh, he's that petty to, write Braden out of the episode. I don't think so. I think it's just more so, in at that industry, there's a lot of timing, a lot of behind the scenes stuff that goes on. We may never find out why Gianni was, written out for sure, but I don't think Joseph Sikora had anything to do with it, at least not maliciously. I don't think so.
There's only room for one white boy in Chicago.
All right. That's what the fans think. That's what the fans are thinking, but I don't know.
There's
I
only
don't
room
know.
for one, only one. But so to be clear, Joseph Sakura is listed as an executive producer on the show, and but there are tons of writers, and I'm not sure if he's responsible for the writing, but he does have a lot of pull, and he is the star of the show. I won't speculate that he was the one to take out Gianni, but we do know that Gianni was written out of the show, and it kind of seemed weird for me because who are these two random people with Tariq? As far as we know, like him and Tariq have been best of buds for
Mm,
the last, what, better part of how many years now?
yeah.
Since even Choke.
Yeah.
So
So we're dating
it
some years back, years,
years,
yes.
years and years, and to not see him there, it kind of felt a little weird. Not kind of, it felt weird that he wasn't there. And that's why I think the scene fell flat for me because it didn't seem like what we were accustomed to. But people have been bringing up that at the end of Power Book 2 Ghosts, that Tariq had kind of like pushed Brayden away. And he says, well, you're not cut out for this. But even if he has, Tariq has told Brayden that time and time again, and he's always come to his rescue.
Exactly.
So
Yes.
that was the only thing. I was just like, yeah, I understand that point, but Brayden is never gonna leave him
Right.
out.
Yeah,
Ever.
exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And I can understand, fans using that as a reason why, okay, Tariq needs a new partner. But as far as, like we know, the last time we saw Braden in the book too, he was still, involved in their business. He just, instead of being Tariq's partner, he now worked for him. So even if, okay, yeah, I could see Tariq not bringing just Braden, but I could, he,
Somewhat,
his,
but Tariq
exactly.
doesn't have anybody.
Yeah, and that's another thing because Tommy and Miguel in the episode they made it a point to say, oh, they don't have the bodies for this war, stuff like that. You mean to tell me Tariq and these two randoms that disappeared after the scene finished were enough to make a difference? Like I'm like, that was a bit of like a head scratching moment. Like I don't
And they magically knew where the gunfight was happening, unless they're
exactly
sharing locations. I
right,
can't.
right, right,
And I don't know Tommy to be that type of drug dealer
Mhm.
to have an iPhone
right.
and to be sharing his location with anyone. But it's Power, and we're gonna roll with it. Okay, so one other thing that I do want to talk about, I want to talk about the Maria situation. So this was a scene that I had a lot of pushback on, which was the call that Tommy makes to Maria. And I just wonder, why weren't we able to see her on screen? Why did he have to make a phone call and say, oh, I'm going to come back for you? And she tells him, she writes this letter saying, oh, come back for us when the war is over. When is the war ever going to be over? Tommy is always at war.
Hmm.
Always. There's no, the war is gonna be over, and it's like people don't know when I'm recording because they are like calling me. But whatever the case is, the war is never going to be over. There's always going to be something happening with Tommy, and that was one of the gripes that I had throughout the entire season. I'm like, in seasons 1 through 5, why does Miranda wanna be with Tommy? Like, you saw what your brother was doing, you saw what's happening there, you knew that you didn't wanna deal with him initially, like, how did he win her over? The chemistry between them didn't seem that great, throughout season 2 and even season 3, and now you're pregnant with someone that you knew for only, what, 3 months? And you're
Exactly.
like, "Oh, I'm gonna keep this baby, we're gonna live this happily ever after life." And then by episode 9, when Kate pulls up, or episode 8, when Kate pulls up, she's like, oh, let me call Mexico on speakerphone, call an airline on speakerphone and see if I can get a ticket. Hey, just want to know, y'all got any tickets available? Let me put this on speakerphone so that you can hear me back there, Kate. So then Kate comes over and is like, well, what you doing, boo?
Right.
What's
Yeah.
happening? Why are you trying to leave with my little grandbaby? And she's having second thoughts. Where was those second thoughts 4 episodes ago?
Exactly. And that's the kind of thing about Maria that I kind of don't really get because initially, like you said, we saw she wanted nothing to do with Tommy for the sole fact that that he was in business with her brother.
Mhm.
She knew what that came with that kind of lifestyle and stuff like that. And I could understand, them getting together. Okay, whatever. He was persistent. Okay. But then bringing a baby into all this, especially after she sees, what happened to Claudia in their, the place where they live,
Mhm.
I'm like, that didn't really make sense to me. So it's like, she got to pick a side. You can't say you choose the life, but then, back out when it's convenient. I didn't really get that.
Yeah. Like it just felt, I don't want to use the term rushed, but it seemed like what I said in the beginning. Like they had to wrap something up. So Maria's storyline technically is kind of up in the air right
Mhm.
now. Is
Exactly.
he going to go back to Mexico for her? Is she going to come to New York? It almost kind of seems like they're writing them out or leaving them with a question
Yes,
mark.
exactly. Yes. And I think that's exactly what they did because let's say, okay, Legacy gets picked up, right?
Mhm.
And then we do see Tommy and, no Maria, no baby. The fans are, of course, going to ask, okay, where's Maria? Where's his son? But the Power
Why
Riders,
does
they could
everybody think
say,
it's going to be a
oh,
boy?
well, I did, I only say son because there was a recent interview. Joseph, I don't know if he meant this, but he did state, he gave some context. At least he said son. This
Okay.
might have just been him assuming. Who knows? It's not, clarification. It's not confirmed, but he did say son. So for now, I'm gonna go with his son. I don't know. Could be a daughter. No, who knows? Could be a daughter.
Okay, I didn't wanna get you sidetracked, but go ahead. Finish your point, though.
um, I'm sorry, but yeah. What was I saying?
Maria.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm sorry. So yeah, let's say yeah, Legacy gets picked up. They decide not to bring back Maria. They don't want to, dive into like another baby storyline. They could just say, oh, Maria and the baby. They decided that the drug game wasn't safe for them. They want to
Mhm.
stay in Mexico, or they didn't tell Tommy where they went, stuff like that. So it gave them the option, like you said, to write out those characters if they chose to. But then on the flip side, they could also choose to bring them back for Legacy. So right now, it's really like you said, both characters are up in the air.
Mm. Yeah, so, here's how I'll think about this. If we do go on to Legacy, if it gets picked up, because we do wanna say if, there's a strong possibility that it will just by fan reaction of them seeing Tommy and Tariq back together again, they're gonna do something, right? But I think that Maria, in terms of that storyline, it'll work as some sort of motivation for whatever Tommy does next. Maybe that will be Tommy's final hurrah, whereas he has to get out of the game in order to be with his family. Because we know that Tommy has wanted a family since we met him, right? He's had satellite families, meaning Ghost Tommy, Tasha, Raina and Jasmine. That was his
Mhm.
satellite family. And
Yeah.
he does have a mom, but he doesn't have his own nuclear family unit, right? And maybe they'll use that storyline to ground wherever Tommy goes. And the reason why I say wherever Tommy goes is because here's something else that we thought of the last time that we spoke. Isn't Tommy dead in New York?
Yeah, and that's another point in the episode that I found kind of interesting because they're talking about going back to New York. But last we saw, he had faked his death. The
Mhm,
feds, when they contacted, when they contacted the Chicago um district attorney's office, they didn't even want to believe that he was alive. They shut that down completely. So
mhm,
as far as New York is concerned, Tommy Egan is a dead man. So him going back to New York isn't exactly in his best interest, especially considering the last time it was in season 6 of OG Power. At the very end, he wiped out Vincent's whole crew, kidnapped Elisa Marie, killed Proctor, just doing all these things. So last we saw those Italians that want Tommy Egan dead. So I
mhm,
feel like, those are two plot threads that if they return to New York and Legacy, they kind of have to close those out somehow,
mhm.
maybe tie
Yeah.
them into the show somehow. Yep.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of people have been speculating whether or not Elisa Marie does make an appearance. They thought that she was going to make an appearance in episode 10 of Force, but they would have to age her up. They would have to do a backstory. So I think that is something for them to build out more in another show. I do think that the Italian problem is going to be something that arises again eventually down the line if we continue to talk about Tommy's story. But I'm just confused of how we fix that plot point of him dying there or not being alive in New York. Now, obviously, a lot of the people who knew who Tommy was and were active members on his case with Ghost,
Mm.
they are dead. Angela
Yeah.
Valdez,
Yeah.
gone.
Angela Sachs.
Cooper
Wow.
Sachs, gone. A lot. What was the mole's name?
Mike
Uh,
Sandoval. Yeah.
Sandoval,
Yeah. He's
gone.
gone. Yeah. Dang.
Donovan,
Yeah.
gone.
Dang.
So a lot.
Wow. And
Yeah,
then the one or two of them, because I know Tamika, now she's a defense attorney.
yeah.
Mock transferred out to another office. So wow,
Right.
they already
Mock
yeah,
is doing Fast and Furious.
yeah,
Tamika
yeah,
is on
yeah.
the is in the private sector right
Yeah,
now,
yeah, yeah.
and she is just going where the money pays her. So we'll see how they tie this up or how they bring this back. I'm curious to see if they do bring it back to New York or even if they take it to another state. I was thinking maybe they can pick up on the California storyline. I don't know if they're gonna do that.
Because I know a lot of fans when Force was initially announced, I know Cali was the original
Mhm.
location.
It
For
was.
whatever reasons, they pivoted away from that. So I think fans would definitely want to see a return to that original idea. But the question is, okay, if Tommy's going to Cali, then why would Tariq go to Cali if something, if he has New York on lock per se on, he has the drug game on lock over there, what would make him pick up and want to move from a city that he's been his entire life?
It's like you're reading my mind, right? Because when Tariq says to Uncle Tommy, "Well, I never known you to stand down from a fight, and I know that you want to conquer wherever it is that you are. Correct me if I'm mistaken. Didn't Ghost and Tommy have New York on lock already, all the barrels?
It's
I
funny you say that because it's like we're like in sync. Because I was thinking that exact same thing. This is a battle that he's already won. Like, yeah, okay, we know that Tommy eventually going, he lost control of the five boroughs, he lost his business, stuff like that. But him and Ghost already took over the city, like, so it's not really that much of a challenge because, theoretically, he already knows how to do that,
Yeah.
so it's like,
And they were tied in with the biggest of the bigs. They had the Jimenez, they had Lobos, they had all of the cartels, right? Out working out of New York. So it's
exactly.
not like he's new to this. Like he's already set those traps.
Mm,
He's already played on that board game. And I'm just figuring out like how does it look with him partnering with his nephew, someone who he has tried to deter from getting out of the game. It almost is like, oh gosh, damn, we gotta do this all over again. Everyone that you try to tell not to do this, they end up just not listening to you and just doing it anyway, which is what we saw with D-Mac and obviously first with not Tamika,
Tariq.
Tariq.
Sorry, Tariq. But to touch on that real quick, I have a question. Like, do you feel as though, it's a right of Tommy to tell both D-Mac and Tariq not to be in the drug game, even though it's something he does? Because, like, there's the saying, what is it?
Do as
Do
I say, not as
yes.
I do.
Yes, thank you.
I
So,
think if
like
anyone can tell them not to do it, it would be the person who has been shot at, fought, nearly killed, almost buried alive. I think he is the person to tell them this
mm,
is not for you.
mm,
Right? Like look at all of the things that Tommy has been through. Look at all of the people that he has lost. The anxiousness that he feels, how much he has to do in order to stay alive and to keep the people around him alive. Even now, with the possibility of not being able to be with his family, do you really want to live this type of life? Do you really want to be secluded? Do you really just want to be this one man standing at all time and always having to look over your shoulder? I mean, that's one of the reasons why a lot of people why they empathize with Ghost because
mm.
he did want to get out. But what people aren't realizing was that a lot of the reasons why Ghost couldn't get out was his own making.
Oh my goodness, it's like you read my mind for all these years because it's like I hate when fans say that, "Oh, Tommy and Tasha are the reason that Ghost couldn't get out the game."
Oh
Not
no,
really.
not
Not really,
really.
no, not
No, no,
really.
no, no, no.
Because yeah, okay, they expressed a reluctance at Hang getting out the game, but that was just because that was the person that Ghost had portrayed himself to be, the biggest drug dealer in NYC for the past, what, 15, over a decade. So that's who they knew him as. So this was a change. But, they put up almost no roadblocks or, virtually, yeah, just about no roadblocks to him actually getting out of the game. Like Milan, Lobos, all those roadblocks that he had that wouldn't allow him out of this life were of his own making.
No argument from me there. And a lot of people there is actually a deep topic that I actually want to talk about, but I don't want us to get too far off track because I had a once you talk about that, it makes me think about this current post it's actually an old post that 4 stars posted and they posted about Tommy and Angela and how their interactions throughout all of their time on
Mm,
Power, right? And my comment on that post was this is one of the reasons why I love Tommy because he stood 10 toes down for Tasha throughout that entire thing. And if you see the comments that men are making about Tasha under that post, under what I said, it is disgusting. And I'm just like, do we have revisionist history about what happened in that show? Are
mm,
we forgetting that Tasha was the one when Ghost, even though he cheated on her, right? And he kept her in the marriage only
mm,
because he knew that she couldn't testify against him. He
exactly.
made her stay married, even though he started a new relationship with
Mm,
someone else. And what did Tasha do? She kept everything on lock. When he got arrested by the same mistress, what did she do? She made sure there was money for the lawyer. She made sure that there was money for tuition. She made sure that the children were okay, that the
mm,
house was okay, that everything got paid when she was
yes.
there, right? And this
Yes.
is of Ghost's his own making because
Mm,
he started dealing with this person. And even Tommy tried to tell him, don't deal with this person.
yes,
Whatever lawyer you
exactly.
think works for the
Yes,
government,
yes, thank you, thank you, thank you.
right?
Yes,
But
yes.
I don't want to go on a
Yeah.
tangent because I did have a very important question and it always makes me think if those roles were casted differently, say for instance, Layla Loren, if she played Tasha and Notori Norton played Angie, do you think people would act the same way, whereas they think that Tasha was the person who didn't believe in him? And so if they looked different, right? If he was married to what Angie looks like and the mistress was Tasha, do you think people would say, "Oh no, he was just in love"?
Oh yeah, undoubtedly. There is not a doubt in my mind that fans would view it differently. And I know for a lot of people it might be subconscious, whatever, but it's like just the fact that, Tasha's a black woman and Angela's Puerto Rican. I think a lot of fans have some like preconceived notions like, okay, Tasha, oh,
Implicit biases.
yes. They're like, oh, Tasha didn't believe in his dream. Angela saw him for the clean, legitimate businessman that he was. And Ghost was never clean. Never. He
Never,
was never.
never.
Like, Ghost was chasing a dream with Angela. That was never, I don't think that was ever going to work out, to be honest. Tasha, I would say, more so saw the reality. She saw, like, okay, you had been dealing drugs since we met. That's who he was. So I can understand why Tasha wouldn't be fully on board with that dream because it hadn't been fully realized yet. It was just a dream. And like Angela, she didn't know the kingpin. She didn't know the reality. She only knew what Ghost told her, the dream that he sold to her. So it's like they were, pretending to be like their 15-year-old selves. I just don't feel like that was very realistic. So when
Yeah.
a lot of fans say, and they kind of like, give Tasha, like call her trash, say all this stuff, I just don't. I think
We know
Tasha and
why.
Angela, yes,
We
exactly.
know why you're doing
Yes.
that.
Yes, we do.
You may
Yes.
not realize it, but we know why.
Yeah,
We know why.
exactly. Yeah.
Alrighty. So, let me reel it back in because I didn't want to get too far off track, but we were still talking about Tommy in that instance and how he related to Ghost. And I think that maybe Tommy is going to take on that mantra now or take on that title of trying to get out of the game when he does go back to his new city because I don't know how much longer they're going to have this Tommy story, but it does kind of seem like they're trying to wrap it up.
Speaking of which, because I
Tell
did
me.
see another clip of there was an interview with Joseph Sikora.
Hmm.
I found it interesting because when he was asked more so, regarding ending Force and maybe potentially ending Tommy's story, he
Hmm.
did bring up that him and Gary Landon were currently developing a Power movie. And he didn't directly confirm it, but it did kind of seem along the lines that they were, planning to use that movie to kind of close out Tommy's story. Because when asked if the movie would take place post spinoff, so post Legacy,
Hmm.
he kind of made it seem like it would. That it would release after Legacy. So I think for fans out there, I don't know if you guys have seen Breaking Bad, El Camino. I think it'll be a similar movie to that, and potentially whether that be death, jail, something like that. I do think that movie centered around Tommy Eakin will close out his character potentially. I think so.
That is a good point, and I think that that's a good analogy with Breaking Bad. I do think that they're going to use that formula to close this story out. It only makes sense, right? So thank you for that. See, this is why I tell you need to follow Elite.tv because he watches other things. Alrighty. So some of the characters that I do want us to close out on. I do want to talk about Bobby really briefly. I actually liked the Bobby character. I thought that he would be able to avenge his wife a little bit better than that.
Right.
I was shocked by how Sang just took him out so quickly. Even Tommy was like, I did not expect for that to happen.
Right.
Like, that's not how I thought this was gonna go. I thought it was really abrupt, but again, in episode 10, they got him wrap things
Wrap up
up. So,
storyline.
yep,
Exactly.
wrap up the
Yes.
storylines. One person that I do want to touch on, and I hope you guys have watched our interview with her, Adrienne Walker, who plays Shanti Showstopper. How did you feel about her finally getting her just due, even through all the trickery and the
Mm.
playing and plotting to kill people,
Yeah.
Tommy himself too? Now she's gonna be running Chicago while Tommy goes to venture someplace else. How do you feel about Shanti?
Shanti's character definitely grew on me, and I liked where her story ended. I just feel as though, like you said, they had a lot to do in that finale. So I just wish we could have spent more time with her character and,
Mm, yep.
seeing her like, in the closing out her story with Jannard, her taking on that role of running Chicago with Miguel. I
Hmm.
just think that they needed more time. But, like you said, they had 2, 3 things to do in this final season and in the finale. So it's like I can understand why they weren't fully able to, flesh out that story, but yeah, I just feel like they didn't have enough time, sadly.
Yeah, I mean, I love that she's running, Chicago now because that's essentially what she wanted. She may have gone about it in the wrong way with trying to convince Jannard to kill his brother and trying to kill Tommy as well. Eventually, she had to team up with the person who was on top, and we've known her to be manipulative and an opportunist, and she gets in where she fits in, and she knows how to use different opportunities to her advantage, and that
Right.
is why now she is on top, and I love that for her, honestly.
Mhm.
We have very strong female characters within the Power universe, and it's good to see one of them come out on top and not have to be in witness protection, not have to be on the run, and not really looking over her shoulder for the wrong reasons, right? Like
Mhm.
Shanti knows how to protect herself. But when I think of someone like Tasha, who is now in witness protection with her daughter and just really can't do what she can't move freely,
Right.
it kind of makes it seem like we're diminishing the character's light a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Moving on though from Shanti, we wrapped up Maria, who's in Mexico. Kate is going back to New York, so we'll be seeing more Patricia Kemblar. I really like this actress. I like what she does. I like her interactions with the Tommy character, and I like how their chemistry works on screen. So I'm glad that she lived. Right now, in terms of Jannard and Vic, let's talk about Vic's storyline. A little bit because we were told when you snitch, you die. That came out of Courtney Kemp's mouth years ago, right? Snitches, they're gonna die. Even
Right.
if you live throughout a couple seasons, Dre,
Eventually.
yep, Dre eventually got his. Now, last time I checked, when I watched Force, I saw Vic sign a letter for saying
Mhm.
saying that he's gonna flip on Tommy. And he was able to get on a plane with a woman that he knew for 2 weeks and go live in witness protection. Please explain to me why you think that Vic was able to survive out of season 2 and 3 and may possibly make an appearance into Legacy.
I didn't mind Vic initially surviving because, man, Tommy using Vic as an inside man with the feds just showed me, it just kind of showed me that Tommy has grown as a character as opposed to him in the original Power, because him in the original Power would have killed Vic
Long time.
without any second. Yes, he would have been
Finish.
gone. Yes,
Gone.
been gone.
Been gone.
But then, as opposed to now, okay, he's like, okay, I have this problem, but instead of just directly eliminating it and moving on, let me use Vic and flip it into a success for me, and I kind of like that. But then the thing is, though, it's like I expected, once Tommy saw that he was no longer useful and he couldn't use him anymore, I expected Vic to, be gone.
Yes.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's like he was able to, go on a plane, and we're led to believe that if Vic had just stayed with Ray and, in their house in the middle of nowhere, Tommy would have presumably never found him. So I'm just like, why was he able to do that as a snitch when we know snitches in Power never last that long? They might get away for the couple seasons, but eventually they meet their maker.
Yeah, I mean, once Tommy killed Stacy, I thought Vic was out of here. Like, we had no
Exactly.
more use
Yes.
for him.
Yes.
And he is a loose end. He gives him the leverage now to be able to tell on him because we already know that Vic had a relationship with the feds and that he was in possible witness protection. He was gonna flip. So why he just didn't kill him immediately after killing Stacy? And like we said before, he just caught Stacy, caught him on the wrong day. Okay, once you saw that his hair was like,
Right. Yeah. 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 It was all. He
it
had just
was
came from the fight with
he
Diamond. He
just
was
came in a
not
fight
having
with
a good
Diamond.
day.
He was having a tough day, okay?
Yeah.
Like you could have probably lived if it was another day, but because of
Exactly.
what was happening that day, I'm sorry, you were just on the wrong end of the stick that day. but but for Vic, once Stacy died, I was like, how is he still
Yeah.
walking around? He still poses the same threat. He's not really that scared of you, even though you may feel that you may have the upper hand on him. He could still tell, and that's exactly what he did. So now he is joined up with our favorite junkie, Jannard.
Right.
And I hate that we call him a junkie because I mean, he's suffering from addiction. But as far as I can recall, wasn't Tommy suffering from the same thing?
That's it's funny you say that because in the when before Diamond and Tommy had fought, and Tommy was just throwing insult after insult after insult at Gennard, calling him a junkie,
Yep.
this, and that. I was like, great scene, but I'm like, Tommy, wasn't you pretty like, on that
Wasn't
stuff,
you
my
on
boy?
that bike too?
Yeah, like he was
Get your
bugging.
nose.
Yes, he was bugging. So I'm like, Tommy, you know what it's like to be in Gennard's shoes, like,
Mhm. But selective memory.
yeah, right, right, right.
Selective memory. So let me ask you this. How do you feel about Vic and Jannard teaming up to avenge their family, even though they both tried to kill their family,
Exactly.
to go after Tommy in wherever he's
Uh-huh.
at?
I don't mind them teaming up per se. I just think that it's a shame, and I know it's not the writer's fault because again, they didn't have enough time. But I
Mhm.
found it interesting that it's a plot thread that was just left open instead of being closed because I
Mhm.
definitely thought, if not Gennard, I did think that Vic, like we said, would have been killed by now. But the fact that they were able to team up and Tommy's talking about going back to New York and stuff like that, the Tommy Egan that we both know and the character that the fans love. He's not the type, I can't imagine him going back to New York knowing he still has active threats left in Chicago. I'm just not seeing that.
Mhm. Mm. Yeah. Okay. Who am I leaving out? So we talked about everybody. We talked about the
Um,
Tariq appearance. We
did we
talked
talk
about
about D-Mac?
Yeah, let's talk about D-Mac. Does D-Mac stay in Chicago or does he move on with Uncle Tommy, considering he has no father there,
Mhm. I
no
think,
uncle,
yeah.
and
If
his girlfriend is going away to Spelman? Sorry, I
That's the
didn't mean
point
to
I was
cut
gonna
you
bring
off.
up. Yes,
Okay.
that's the point I was gonna bring up. If him and Genesis had stayed together, I think there would have been a chance that either he would have stayed in Chicago or
Mhm.
maybe followed her to Atlanta, I believe.
Mhm.
But the fact that, D-Mac gave her money, sent her on her way, told her that they're, effectively broken up. I think, especially given the conversation between Tariq and D-Mac, and he was heavily saying that, oh, he has Uncle Tommy, even if he has no one else, and that, Tommy's gonna look out for him and stuff like that. And then given the fact that Tommy has called D-Mac his number two in the game, I think there's a strong chance that we'll most likely be seeing D-Mac in Power Legacy, especially if it's taking place in New York.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. I would love to see the dynamic between him and Tariq because I do feel like there was a little tiniest bit of tension there, maybe a little bit of jealousy, or maybe regret, right? Of not being in Tommy's life on Tariq's part. And now maybe he's trying to make up for that. And I am curious to see how they work alongside each other, DMAC and Tariq, considering that DMAC is such a hothead and Tariq is more calculated. He has taken on a lot of ghost mannerisms in
Right.
terms of how he deals with people and how he
Mhm.
manipulates people. He probably wouldn't admit it, but he's
Right.
like his father in a lot of regards.
Speaking on that, I just real quick, I just wanted to ask you, in the scene between Tariq and D-Mac, did you pick up on like, because a lot of fans were saying, like you had said earlier, that it seemed like Tariq might have been plotting or like, kind of like, thinking about manipulating the situation a bit. Did you catch like sinister vibes from Tariq, or do you feel like that was just a bit of projection on the fans' part?
Oh, I felt something. Something didn't feel right in that scene, especially with the music that they played
Exactly.
and Tariq's mannerisms, like even just the little looks he was given.
Hmm.
It felt something felt off. Which is why I was like, does he feel regret? Does he feel jealousy? What is he feeling right now? And I would love to find out how they expound on that in a spinoff because there's something happening there. So maybe he missed Tommy and he's realizing that he missed him because of the conversation that he had with DMAC. And maybe he realizes that he made a lot of bad decisions in terms
Right.
of how he dealt with Tommy when they were in New York, stealing from him, almost being killed by him, right? Being hung
Right.
off a roof. So maybe he was just thinking about those things. Was it sinister? Only time will tell.
Right. Yeah. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Right. Yeah.
We will have to wait and see. But final thoughts on Force as a series. How did you feel about it? And what's your
I
rating? 1 out of 10.
I gotta give it, I would say 7 out of 10. And it's kind of unfair in a way because I feel like Force was always the kind of series that kind of always got like the end of the shaft, I guess you would say, because in
Hmm.
season one, they would have to deal with COVID. I know in season two, I believe that was the actors slash writer strike. And then
Yep.
season three, it's the last season. You have to
Yeah.
wrap up all those storylines real fast and set up for legacy, but still give the fans like, that satisfying conclusion. So they never really had much of a chance to, properly flesh out a lot of the things that the fans wanted to see. But with that said, I still yeah, stick to a 7 out of 10. I do think that Force, especially once Gary Lennon took over,
Mm,
love him as a showrunner because I
yeah.
think that the show really found its identity, especially in that first season. You can tell it was like kind of affected by COVID heavily,
Mhm.
but given that it's taking place in Chicago, they're using the slang, a lot of those locations, stuff like that. I definitely feel as though the show kind of found their footing in seasons 2 and 3.
Mhm. Completely agreed. I think that the show did an about face and there was a lot of corrective actions within season 2 but I don't feel like they lost their footing in terms of bringing over the storylines that was from the original or from season 1. Once they brought them over into season 2, things that didn't work, they nipped them in the bud. And
Exactly.
I was fine with that. In terms of a rating, I would give it an 8 only because of the reasoning that we've given so far. We know that there were a lot of roadblocks for this show. And initially, season 1, a lot of people didn't really vibe with it, but they took the criticisms and they took the critiques from the fans and they corrected it. And there's nothing more that you can ask for as a fan when you have a concern or you have a grievance. If they are listening to you, that means that they want you to be happy with the product that they put out. And as a fan, I love that, right? Like, I don't want someone just to ignore me because they have a story to tell and they just want to get it out by any means necessary. I like that they took the feedback and they were able to bring in Gary Lennon and he put together a masterful show.
Mhm.
There were characters that I liked, there were characters that I loved, there were characters that I didn't like. And I know that I didn't like them because of such of the good job that they were doing within the show, right?
Mhm.
Forest as a whole, I'll give it an 8. There were things that they could have worked on, but we know that they had a lot of limitations. Could
Mhm.
Forest have gone for another season? Of course. There's
Right.
so many
Yeah.
things happening. There's still the Jannard factor. There's still the Vic factor. There's still the feds, and we still have a mole within the feds. Someone else is gonna find this out, right?
Mhm.
Tommy is
Right.
still killing people left and right. As a matter of fact, he just killed what was the guy's name from the cartel?
About
No, no, no.
Ortega. Ortega.
Ortega.
Yeah.
He just
Yeah.
killed Ortega.
Yeah. Uh,
Like,
right. Yeah.
we
Yeah.
still have things that can be tackled in Chicago. So sure, could they have gone for another season? Of course. And Power, if there's anything that I know, they can make a story out of anything.
Right.
So, um, I'm glad that we do have something to look forward to, but I'm especially glad that we do have Origins coming back or coming for us, and then we have Raising Kanan coming back. And I think that Force ended on a good note, or at least the best note that they could have ended on
Exactly. Yeah.
given the cards that they were
Right.
dealt.
Yeah.
But and anything else from you before we leave?
No, I would just say, yeah, like you said, given the fact that, like Force faced a lot of limitations and stuff like that, I feel as though, the way that Gary Landon wrapped up the story, it was really the best that he could. And, it was still a very good ending in my eyes.
I agree. That's all that we could have expected. Maybe I was expecting too much when I initially watched the last episode, but I've come to terms with that. Now, my question for you guys, have you come to terms with that? Please drop in the comments. Let me know how you felt about the final episode of Force. What do you think could have been changed? What do you think could have been done better? Or do you think everything was done great? If not, let us know. But there is somebody that I do want to shout out, and I do want to give a cute little shout out to my boy, MovieBot, who has always been bigging us up, me and Gaz, for all of the content that we put out over at Chronicles of Power. So, hey, MovieBot, and everybody, I know that you know who he is already, so
The
you don't
GOAT.
need me to
Yeah,
go
man's
tell
the
you to
GOAT.
go follow him or to go
Yeah.
look for him. But I do want to shout him out because he always makes mention of Chronicles of Power, and even me when he is talking about behind the scenes footage that we put out or any of the posts that we have. So thank you, MovieBot, and everybody. Thank you for a wonderful season. Thank you, Jay, for joining me today. And make sure you follow at Chronicles of Power. We're still gonna be rolling, even though we're in the off season. We're waiting for Raising Kanan to come back, and I'm pretty sure we'll find some more scenes from behind the scenes of Origins. And of course, there's crime happening in my neighborhood, so you're gonna hear an ambulance or two. Hopefully that you guys don't hear, but I know that Jay can definitely
Yeah,
hear
yeah,
it.
yeah.
But
It's all good, all good.
all good, all good. But Jay, thank you for your wonderful insights for this episode, and I can't wait to speak to you again. Please follow Jay at elite.tv. We'll also have it in the show notes. And if you have any questions for me, feel free to follow me at Keemie Cakes on Instagram. It's been a wonderful season, you guys. Take care. Jay, say bye.
Sorry.